an additional insured. So certainly it covers everything. So there would be no responsibility of the homeowners for anything that would occur, you know, according to the insurance policies. So, for example, if a piece of equipment backs into a resident's vehicle, all that would be covered under the project coverage.
Okay, that was all the questions, and they just weren't answered in the other open houses. It wasn't an effort to derail. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so those are the people that signed up. Is there anyone else out there who wants to make a comment, who wasn't? Come on up, and we're going to limit it to residents of our city, Mr. Zick. So come on up and give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Lynn Carter. I'm at 1786 City Heights Drive. I've been there since June 1st, 1983, and I really wish you'd have done this several years ago when I was healthier and could work more. It will be a hardship trying to pay this 15 years down the road or what. I'm just going to be older. But one of the main things I'm here about, in front of our house, 1786 City Heights Drive, is a 2-block long street. We're in the middle of it. We had a street light there. They took it down. They're not putting it back up. When you look out your window, you can't see if a car is parked in front of your house. I think that for our safety, we need that street light back in the middle of the block. There's no light. It's like we're in the country. We can see the stars very well, but the clouds are gone. And that's my issue, the street light. Aside from the fact that I wish we weren't doing this assessment, but the street light needs to come back to the middle of City Heights Drive. You have one on each end, you had one in the middle.
I'm looking, it's a long street, it has 2 intersections, so there is a pretty big space in between. And our city policy is that we do intersections. What else have we got, Mr. Thompson?
Mayor and council, our policy is for a traffic purpose. Certainly, all the intersections, if they're not lighted now, that's something we would do as part of the project. So if there's, you know, a curve or something else in the roadway, we certainly look at each case on an individual basis, and we could certainly work with the resident to do that after the meeting.
All right, so we'll talk about it. We'll see if they can do their best. Anybody? Yes?
I'm Jerry Bovey at 1839 Honor Court. This last question could be answered. The private company is going around taking out all the street lights right now because I think they have to move the poles back farther. And I think that's what's happening in our neighborhood. Is that what's going on?
Mr.
And they
Thompson?
got some up already. The new poles are up, and some of it on City Heights and Agate, and some of them aren't, like on Honor Court, down in the court. That pole has not been replaced yet, but they took the old one out. So I think they're in that part doing that, in that process right now, just to answer the last question.
Is he right, Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Mayor and Council, as part of the reconstruction projects, the space we need to dig up the roadbed, a lot of times the utility poles are removed temporarily. So, for example, if there's a light on a utility pole, that could come down temporarily, but that would be reinstalled.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Ms. Juneman? Did you have something? Okay. All right, so now I'm going to let you come up and speak, but, you know, I did say several times beforehand that you should sign up so that we could judge this better, but come on up. This has been posted, and you've all got individual mailings sent to your house.
There's nothing about how to address the council.
But I have said so several times in the meeting. And so that's plenty. Thank you. Go ahead, name and address, please.
I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us and to take in our concerns with this project. I know for myself and a lot of people I'm sure here, you know, it's our first time dealing with any type of assessment as a homeowner. So a lot of the questions, I thank you for answering most of these questions. My main concern for coming to this meeting tonight was due to that flyer that was passed around our neighborhood. Now, I am grateful to get the new roads and sewer, and I think that's a great project. I'm happy to get it. My only concern with the whole process is when you hear about someone coming and saying, well, hey, you might be paying more than you should, your fair share, but you got to get down here and file a complaint. My problem lies then if I don't file a complaint and I find out my neighbor, files a complaint and his assessment is $2,000 less than mine, well, I would be pretty upset. So I feel as long as the assessments are fair, I think most people that are here due to that flyer, I think that would address most of their concerns. I know it would address mine. One quick question for Mr. Thompson. When you talk about the city's liability and the project's, the construction crew's liability, does that also include if with the sewer system, if the sewer system backs up into my house, would that be covered under that project, or is that my own responsibility for like insurance, for flood insurance or something like that?
Mayor and council, if that backup is caused as part of the construction project, it would be covered under the project coverage.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have. Thank you.
And so I also want to talk just a little bit, or have, I guess it would be Mr. Thompson, talk about a little bit more about the city policy, because the amount of your assessment is a very, very small amount of the project. And whether you know it or not, you've all been paying for street projects the entire time you've lived in the city, because the city's policy is that a much larger portion of your street is paid for by the other taxpayers. And so you now, if you didn't do your project, would essentially not be taking advantage of your turn. I mean, the other taxpayers are going to be paying more than you are for your project, and you've been paying for theirs. And and you get the added bonus of they 3-4 years ago were paying $8,000, and you're going to pay $58,000 or $50,000. But maybe you can talk about that a little bit more.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor and council. In 1999, the city adopted a pavement management policy where we went out and rated the condition of all the streets in the city. They were in very poor condition. And the policy was that a portion of the project cost would be assessed to properties that were directly benefiting. And about 20 to 25% of the cost back then was covered by residents, and then the council, the goal was to move to a 50-50 cost split. But certainly, you're right, these residents have been paying for projects in Hills and Dales area, the Kenwood project. So certainly, I believe specific to this project, roughly 25% is coming from assessments, and the rest is other city funds. And so certainly the other taxpayers are paying that remainder. So now it's these residents' times to get that investment from the other people throughout the city. So we still are not completed with our reconstruction of streets. So certainly if this project isn't done, certainly other projects would be invested by taxpayers throughout the city.
Okay. Mr. Nephew, did you have something?
Yeah, there was the question earlier about that 50% number that may have come up during the hearings, and I think it's a source of confusion because for several years our goal was to be moving the assessments higher in an effort to reach the 50% mark. And with the economic slowdown, it became harder to justify that. We have sort of some conflicting laws telling us what to do. One of them is that in order to borrow money for street projects, we have to assess at least 20% of the project in order to qualify under the state law for issuing a bond on street projects. So that's kind of a floor. And the council's target was to get to the 50% level. But we've been seeing a problem in the last decade, about the rain gardens. We're subject to all kinds of Clean Water Act regulations and the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permitting process and all these extra things which have been really jacking up the cost. It's not just a matter of laying down a new course of pavement. It's a very complex engineering process that we're required by law to do any time we disturb a street or any other surface in the city. And so we've been seeing costs rise. We've been seeing the economic downturn that makes it harder to justify the assessments as they were getting. But we still have to have this floor, and we're still trying to do it equitably among all the properties and all the residents throughout the city. So that's why we've gotten to these particular numbers on this project, is by doing that very detailed analysis, which didn't used to be done several years ago, partly because everybody's property was going up 10, 20% a year in value, and they pretty much weren't asking questions about whether or not their property was gaining value each year. As far as, objections to the principle of saying, I just think I want to be able to get a few bucks off, I'm pretty confident that, I'm doubtful that staff is going to come back saying, hey, let's give everybody who complains a $1,000 discount. Those are probably not going to get approved. And so anybody who thinks that, that concern that I'm just going to be able to, if I extend my hand, I'll be getting some free cash back, you'll be having to go to court to do that, if that's the only basis of the complaint, if there's no rationale other than I just want to pay less. The other things will be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes people have some legitimate thing that makes their property situation genuinely different from other properties, and that justifies it being treated differently. And there are also the deferrals for seniors and for environmental hardship, economic hardship, and for people who are, deployed overseas guards members and things like that. So certainly don't hesitate to take advantage of those things. But to the point that the gentleman raised, I absolutely agree. It's a problem if people have an idea that if I just go down and complain a little bit, I'm going to get a little bit of money off, because then everybody has to do that, and then where are we? Well, in essence, we went through that process at the beginning in figuring out what the fair numbers ought to be and what the numbers are that our professional staff and professional consultants who looked into this think will hold up to scrutiny if anybody really wants to take it into the court system and hire an attorney and spend a couple of years of your life chasing down $500 that you think you might get at the end of it.
Ms. Schoenemann.
There is one other advantage, having been in the Kenwood project 4 years ago. A lot of your neighborhood is the same age as mine, which we now live in old neighborhoods. My house is 60 years old. So I've lived here all that time, so I'm older than dirt. But I remember when a lot of these streets were built, and they weren't built as real streets at the time, and we are actually quite fortunate that many of them are still holding up. A lot of those were just gravel with oil over them, and then they came out and put an overlay. Some of you live on newer streets if I live in a newer house. But the point is, some of those streets are 50 to 60 years old and were not properly constructed to begin with. And the advantage of doing this is not only do you get a new street, but they might look at your 60-year-old gas line before it blows up, because the utility companies come out when you have everything like that exposed and examine all of your pipes. So those things are better than they've been for years. So you gain in some of the things you don't look at every day. But you might not want to have to find out the hard way like some of the people in St. Paul did. After your house blows over the 2 blocks away is a little late to check the gas line. So the fact that we do those things are done at the time is an advantage for you as well.
There was a woman back there. Come on up. Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Nicola Opine. I live at 17...
Could you state your name again?
Nicola Opine.
Okay.
I live at 1730 Sylvan Street.
Okay.
I apologize for not putting my name down.
That's all right.
This is all new to me and I'm nervous. We live on Sylvan Street and we don't access our house from Sylvan Street. We can't access our home from Sylvan Street. We have to access it from the alleyway.
Is that the alleyway that your neighbor doesn't have behind her house?
I think he's at the other end.
All right.
We've definitely got an alleyway, a very narrow alleyway, but it's there. The problem is, Sylvan Street itself is in a bad state because there's 100,000 cars going up there every day. There's to the waterworks. And I just sort of feel that we're getting assessed to pay for a big business that, we're not even using the road. The regional water services are using the road, and we're not. So that was my concern, because we're in the $5,800 assessment too, so.
All right. Does the water utility get assessed?
Yeah.
Mayor and council, I can speak specifically to, we are improving the entire access, the alley. Just because somebody has an address on Sylvan and they access from somebody else, it may seem confusing, but there is being the improvement there. And as for the St. Paul water, I think back, when the city transferred ownership, I think there was a clause that exempted them from special assessments.
Okay.
So I believe they are exempt from any cost of improvement.
All right. And so I guess I didn't even realize. So at one point we sold them the land that they're on?
Mayor and council, I'd have to look at the ownership, the underlying ownership. I believe there may be an easement over their property, and perhaps that was the agreement, but I can't speculate at this point.
It's all right, it's an aside anyway.
So that,
So the general answer, and I'm trying to think of what actually the answer was, did you say that there was going to be improvements made to their alley also? Okay. And so you're getting some improvements on Sylvan Street, which you don't use other than look at. It'll look a little nicer. And then your alley's going to get
Actual
improved.
access will be-
the
And so
alley
where-
is a
where would
lot
their-
smaller
where
than the
would their-
street.
Where would their sewer and water and stuff be? Sullivan or Sylvan? Or,
Mayor and council, their water and sewer services actually come off of Sylvan Street, and then they access Larpenter Avenue. There's a alley that connects Larpenter Avenue to the end of Kingston Street. That's where several of those homes actually access the roadway.
okay, so, I mean, some of their infrastructure is indeed in Sylvan.
That is correct, and actually Sylvan Street is the right-of-way for St. Paul Regional Water Services' large water main distribution lines, too. They have several, like 6 large distribution lines through there underneath that street.
I hope that they're nice and deep and in good shape, so we don't hit any of them. So, there's going to be improvements made to both how you get to your house and to your pipes and stuff in the street that you don't drive on, but it has your other infrastructure in it, so,
Well, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
yeah.
Hi,
Name and address once you get to the microphone.
Chuck Berglund, 1699 Agate. I'm
Hi.
the mayor, council, staff. I'm for the project. Maybe unusual here tonight, but I want to thank everybody for all the hard work you've been doing, all the planning since September, I believe it has been, probably before that. Our neighborhood looks kind of shabby right now. I think a new street would really look really good. So I think some of the neighbors are a little short-sighted. There's a good chance that you could cancel this project. We could be back here in 5, 10 years, and then it's going to be 10, 12, 15 grand. So I want to say just move ahead with the project. Neighbors, the houses are getting older. There's all the street, it's just going to look that much better. And 5,800, I think that's as cheap as we're going to get. So thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, you have another objection?
Mayor, we got one additional objection, 202 Summer.
Okay. Mr. Zick, this is an assessment hearing. It has to do with people who live in the area, and so, seeing you live in another city.
Mr. Rossbach, I have
Mr. Zick,
financial and
Mr.
property
Zick, you do
interest in
not
Maplewood.
live in this
and is a
assessment
public
area.
hearing. And are you going
are-
to deny me my right to speak?
Yes, I am.
All right, that's on the record.
Thank you. Are there any
There's
other?
a lot of things
are there
these
any
people
other
need to know
residents?
about this process.
Are there any other residents that want to speak? Now, I'm going to say it one last time then, that if you do not file an objection and you want to, before I close the public hearing, then you're giving up your right to do so. Excuse me?
Can we pull it away if we decide no?
The objection can always be canceled. It's just that you give up your right to file one. Okay? Yeah. So if you have second thoughts, that's not a problem. Is there anybody else? Okay, Mr. Thompson?
1791 City Heights Drive.
Okay. Anyone else who wants to file an
I
objection?
dropped it off here this afternoon. I want to make sure it got in. 1723 Edgemont.
Mayor, 1732 Edgemont.
723.
1723 Edgemont. We'll put that on the record, and that is on the list right now.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question. It's a personal question.
We need your
Yeah.
name and address.
Marvella Lackner, 395 Kingston. I'm her daughter. If there's a financial hardship, is Mr. Thompson the person we go to? You say it can be deferred for 15 years. What if the resident is no longer there in 15 years? How does that, is that a personal discussion that we have with you?
Mayor and council, what we'll do for the financial hardship or the senior citizen, we'll recommend approval to you upon them providing the proper paperwork. So that's a process where we would actually have a conversation with you to discuss that.
Okay, so you have her address and you'll contact us, or we contact you after this meeting? That's where I'm confused.
Yep. Mayor and council, we will send out a notice to you before the next city council meeting stating what our recommendation is on your objection. And if you disagree with that, you should show up. But if you agree with that, then you would expect paperwork in, 4 to 5 weeks or later this year to fill that out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and so by my memory anyway, really for the financial and the senior and certainly the military deferrals, I don't recall any time that the staff has ever recommended not approving those. However, what does happen in many cases, but in the financial case, is that you do have to prove that you have a financial hardship. And so it's pretty rare that people actually turn in the paperwork because they determine that they really apparently don't have a financial hardship. But anyway, if you file one, almost for sure the staff will recommend that we approve those, and then it's up to you to provide the documentation. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing.
My name is Donald Schmea, I live at 1706 Able. I guess I just got a question and a comment. My street is in very good shape, and I'm trying to figure out what the improvement is going to be to my street, since I've already paid the assessment back in '91 when they put the street through. And I actually asked Michael Thompson to walk down my street the last meeting I went to and to show me anything that's wrong with my street, because the street looks very nice and it runs into Kingston, which looks very nice. So I'm wondering what the benefit to me is going to be. Where is the money benefit ever going to be? Is it going to be something under the street that nobody's going to see, that some assessor's going to come out when I sell my house? And I can get a lower interest rate. Just don't do it. It'll be zero. It's pretty simple. So I'm trying to figure out where my benefit's going to be on my street, since it looks so good, has a great pitch running down to Kingston, which might cause a problem down there, I'm not sure. I'm just wondering where that benefit's going to be on my street.
I believe in front of your house we're burying a sizable nugget of gold down in the street.
But no digging is allowed.
Do you have a real answer, or is this something that would require further discussion later on? Or?
Yep. Mayor and council, Steve Coomer can address that specifically.
Mayor and council, this entire area of the neighborhood was redone back in 1991 as part of a water main improvement. Kingston Avenue from Jackson Street to Gurney Street, as well as Beaumont Street and a section of Able Street, I believe, had a water main improvement done on it in 1991. Back then, they didn't put new concrete curb and gutter on the streets, and part of the reason that these residents are receiving the $5,000 assessment versus the $5,800 assessment is because they're receiving a credit for that improvement, essentially.
So the water main part of it?
Yes, there was the pavement was redone back in 1991. So essentially, we're going to come back in there and put in curb and gutter and redo the pavement surface in that area. And also, we're going to be doing a storm sewer improvement down at the end of Beaumont Street as well to deal with some erosion issues.
So I'm going to get a new street, which I don't need because it's in very good shape. But I am going to get curb and gutters, and that's what I'm going to pay $5,000 for.
And storm sewer.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Sounds about like that's about it?
Yeah. Pretty ridiculous.
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Mayor and council, as part of these projects, a neighborhood improvement, as Ms. Juniman mentioned, yeah, sometimes water main was put in, but there wasn't thought to the system. The storm sewer's not there, there's no curb and gutter, so it's an entire reconstruction of that street. So that is the benefit to that street.
Well, and not necessarily having to do with your direct benefit. I mean, we do, of course, do areas in the city. We don't, another woman had got up and talked about her street, seems like it's in pretty good shape and whatnot. Well, if we leave out one street in your neighborhood, then that street's going to need to be improved sooner than all the rest. And so we'll have to come back in and do one street and pay much, much higher rates to do an individual street than we would to do a whole neighborhood. And so certainly there's an advantage to the city to do neighborhoods so they're all on the same schedule, so that we're not coming in and out. You know, we have people that complain to us frequently about construction projects taking place in their neighborhood and the construction traffic on their streets and that type of thing. And so, you know, certainly your neighbors aren't going to be all that excited about having to come into your street 15 years from now. Their streets are fine, and now they have all these big equipment hauling in to take care of one street. And so there are certainly advantages to the good of the neighborhood to make improvements. That does not speak to your individual situation, but it's an understanding of why it's important that we do areas.
But isn't it in my particular neighborhood or whole section, we'll call it, the only street that needs to be worked on is Gurney? I mean, on the whole, all the way from Jackson, which is good, Kingston's good, Beaumont's my back property, which is good. What other street needs to be worked on other than Gurney?
It sounds like there are other improvements being made. And so, you know, you can file an objection. I assume you probably have.
Yes, the objection's been there.
Okay.
But it almost seems like it's going forward no matter what we're doing. I mean, somebody says you're already pulling out, you know, power lines or whatever. I mean, so I don't understand what the vote's even for if you're already moving forward on it. When you're obviously spending money, it's already being done.
Quite frankly, there's a fair chance it's going to go forward.
Yeah.
I mean, this is something that this council considers to be extremely important to the city. I mean, we have accelerated the street projects because years ago, the councils ignored them. And so we're left to pick up the pieces. And so we're just trying to get caught up to a place where we're supposed to be.
I totally agree with that. I just think somebody should come and look at Gurney, maybe do Gurney.
Well, I
And leave
understand
the rest of
that
it
you think,
alone.
I understand that you think it's a great deal except in front of your house. And
I think all the way down, Abel.
So, that should be enough now. We understand your objection.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Junman, did you have a comment? Were you up before already? No. Okay.
I'm Fred Bauer, 1741 Agate.
Okay.
It's where Agate crosses Onacrest right there. I've spent already about $8,500 on my sewer and stuff like that prior to this work being done, and now they're coming through to assess.
Is this your sewer, your private sewer?
Well, it went into your street, and I paid for all of it, but I am working with your people over here, and they are working with me very good as far as making assessments to whatever. But this work does need to be done from the standpoint of what I spent. If I spent this kind of money and my sewer at the connection where it goes into the main drag is broke, what shape are the other streets in? They can't be any better than mine. So I'm going to say right now, affordability, people are a little bit afraid here. Some can afford it, some can't. I think it's a good assessment, and I'm just okay with what you're doing, and I sure hope you people do go ahead with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to hit the hammer now. I'm going to close the public hearing. All right. Public hearing is closed. So we're left now with what it is that the council wants to do. Looks like we do need to have a resolution to adopt the assessment roll. Can we keep it a little quiet, please? Let's keep it a little quiet. If you want to talk, go out in the lobby. We need a resolution adopting the assessment roll and a resolution that receives bids and award construction contract. Mr. Nephew.
There was a question about tonight's votes, and I think for people who aren't familiar with the process, it's important to know that the really crucial vote on whether or not to proceed with this project happened at an earlier meeting, and it had to be a 4-to-1 supermajority. And so we could, in theory, decide to stop it here and flush the investment that's already been made, but it has been a very substantial investment. So the first thing in front of us is a resolution adopting the assessment roll. So I'd like to offer a motion to approve the resolution adopting the assessment roll minus all of the objections that have been entered into the record tonight.
Second. All right, so Mr. Nephew has made a motion, which was seconded by Ms. Goodman, to adopt the assessment roll minus all of the objections that were filed. Is there any further discussion necessary? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then we need a resolution that receives the bids and awards the construction contract.
So moved.
Mr. Nephew has made a motion, and it again was seconded by Ms. Juniman, and it is to receive the bids that we got in from the three different contractors and award the construction contract to T.A. Shifsky and Sons, Inc. And along with that, we are then awarding options 1 through 8, if I remember correctly. Is that right? Excuse me?
Plus the base bid.
Yes.
Plus whatever he said. Oh, the base bid, yes, right. Yeah, we're awarding more than just the alternatives.
Yeah, we thought we'd see if we could do the
So,
alternatives without
it's the base bid plus alternatives 1 through 8. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sounds like ayes all.
We need a break. Can we have a...
All right, and so let's see. It's 8:45. Well, I guess we seem to be on a little bit of a roll at the moment.
Can't we have a break?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, do you want a break? I was going to take care of the alcohol thing.
Oh, all right. That's good.
All right, so the next thing on our agenda under unfinished business is consideration of a penalty for alcohol compliance failure, the ponds of Battle Creek Golf Course. And so over the last couple of meetings, we have been going through the process of discussing the various compliance failures that we had, and at our last meeting, no representative from the pond showed up, and so we asked that maybe they consider actually sending somebody so that they could have some idea that we consider this to be serious. And so is there anybody here?
Yes.
Is there anybody here from the Ponds Golf Course?
Yes. Go ahead.
Would that be you?
That would be me.
In the
All
golf
right.
shirt, no less.
Could you give your name for the...
Brad Benke.
Excuse me?
Brad Benke.
Brad Benke.
I'm the general manager and head golf professional at the Ponds Battle Creek.
And Brad, were you the person that came in when you were given the liquor license?
Yes, the full liquor license when we upgraded, so to speak.
And we made the exception, so to speak.
And so, yeah, we talked about making an exception in how much we charge because you only operate part of the year and...
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And how, as a county institution, you would be extremely diligent about making sure that you did not serve minors?
Yes.
And so can you tell us then why it is that you failed the compliance check?
Well, first of all, thanks, council. I'm not one to make excuses. It's my responsibility. It's my business. I'm accountable for my staff. I'm not here to make an excuse, which is why when I was encouraged to attend the last meeting, I had a prior engagement. And I'm sure you hear excuses all the time, so it's ultimately the buck stops with me. It's my responsibility as my staff member. He was a college intern. He was overwhelmed in the position, as it turns out. He's no longer employed there. But it's my responsibility. I take full responsibility for it. And whatever punishment the council deems necessary, I'm willing to pay, because it's my deal.
I was thinking that maybe the rack would be appropriate punishment. What's your training program that you do?
We insist that all staff members ID everybody who looks under the age of 40. We conduct alcohol server training. Being an operation that is seasonal, we employ a lot of retired folks, a lot of college students, so the timing of this was bad for me, obviously. Again, I'm not making an excuse, but we had not conducted that training yet because we do that in early June to mid-June. Once we get my full staff on board, Everybody's back from college. That's when we do the training. The check took place in May, so we hadn't had that training yet. But I tell everybody, I personally tell everybody when I sit down in my office to train them and welcome them to the team at the Ponds of Battle Creek, that they need to ID every single person that attempts to purchase alcohol that appears under the age of 40. This particular person was a little overwhelmed and got kind of hurried and made a mistake.
All right. Ms. Juniman.
We encourage this in a lot of places, so it wouldn't just be about you, but maybe you should erase the who looks under 40 and just say card everybody. Some of us would, of course, at a certain age with a certain color hair would think that was marvelous, but I just think it's a better insurance policy, and I know you said this person is no longer with you, and you don't have to name this person, I suppose, but when you do your training, you might want to make an example of what happened to somebody who had a bad moment. As you may remember from the last time, I'm always the one that is the meanest at the beginning, and I don't get any nicer with time. And when it's like if it happens at our community center, or if it happens at the North St. Paul community, anywhere where there's the community involved in sponsoring the activity and it happens, to me, it's almost like it's twice as bad, because it looks like, well, they can be sloppy, but the poor guy's trying to run a bar can't. So, no, you can't be sloppy, just so you remember that. But you might want to make, without naming the poor slob, an example out of this person for the people you're going to train in the future. I don't even understand how it happens. Isn't that how naive am I? I know why it happens, I just don't know how it happens. There's a difference. So don't let it happen again. Either that or drag the moron with you.
Duly noted. Like I said, I don't make excuses. It's ultimately my fault.
Well, so we're just hoping that you will,
Not do it again.
learn from this and find a way to avoid it happening again.
I'll do everything within my powers to do so, believe me.
All right.
In these economic times, in this worst spring golf season in 25 years, it hurts, so.
All right. Mr. Nephew?
I want to move approval of the staff proposed fine of $500 for the alcohol violation at the ponds at Battle Creek.
Mr. Lannis, let's see. We'll start out with Mr. Nephew made a motion, seconded by Mr. Lannis, to approve the proposed $500 fine. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It was ayes all. Thanks for coming in.
Fair enough. Yep.
Okay, so we've had a break requested. We're kind of moving into a new part of the meeting, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 9 o'clock. I call this meeting of the Maplewood City Council for Monday, May 9th, back to order. We're taking a quick break, and so now we're back to work. So the next thing on our agenda is a bid award on improvement bonds, General Obligation Improvement Bond Series 2011A. And so, Mr. All.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is an award of bids. The bids were received this morning. Terry Heaton from Springstead's here. We'll talk about the actual results, which are very good news. And these are two projects. One is the Western Hills project that you just approved to proceed. The other is for the first phase of the improvements to Gladstone, which is also on your agenda this evening, to proceed with that. It's a $10 million issuance, although in looking at the overall numbers and the prices, Terry can touch on that very briefly. But it's great news, and rather than me explain how those bonds work and the interest rates and all of the information, I'll turn it over to Terry Heaton from Springstead.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Asbach and members of the City Council. Great to see you this evening and to be able to present the good news that Mr. All indicated. The yellow sheet was distributed during the break, and it is a bid tabulation of the bids that were received in our offices at 10:30 this morning on your behalf. There are 9 bids that are listed. That's a fabulous turnout. And if you look on the back of the second page, you'll see that with the syndicate bids, that is multiple financial institutions bidding together, there are over 30 financial institutions that were looking to bid on your bonds this morning. That kind of competition is always good, along with the market starting to improve as far as bonds go, lower interest rates in the last couple of weeks, so that our estimate a month ago, this is a 20-year bond, we were estimating 3.5%, and your actual low bid from Morgan Keegan, the first one listed, came in at 3.18%. So that's 32 basis points less. I can't really call these savings, it's just an improved estimate, but it's actually about $350,000 less than our estimate just a month ago. So that's good news for all. This bond issue, part of the appeal is they're looking for high credit ratings, and the city of Maplewood has the second highest credit rating available. AAA is the only one higher. So there's also a Moody's report affirming the city's AA1. They talk about the city's strengths, the satisfactory reserve levels, sizable tax base, stable socioeconomic profile, and lack of reliance on the state aids, and so that you are self-sufficient and independent. So it's a very strong report showing some stability, and all of that helped you in the market today. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and we recommend, of course, the low bid from Morgan Keegan.
Is that report part of our information that we have in our packet?
Mayor and Council, no. As a matter of fact, we just got it this morning, and so we'll be forwarding that to each of the council members. It's very good information for the council to look at and really talk about where our strengths and weaknesses, how could we improve our bond rating. Talks about one thing, that we have 10 property owners that pay a lot of our property taxes. Well, that's great, and that's a strength, but that could also be a weakness. And so the other weakness that Moody's talked about a little bit is one that you just heard about, and that is decreasing residential property values. And so we absolutely need to continue to watch and invest in our city in order to keep our bond rating. And so it all works together. And the final thing that, and Terry just hit on it, financial stability. They talked about a decision, Council, that you made just a few meetings ago, and that is to continue to keep the overall percentage of reserves available, and you increased it from 36 to 38.5%. The bond rating people absolutely noted that, and that is one of our strengths as a city in order to do that. And so those types of decisions, when we say they impact our bond rating, this was the time. And so we were able to reaffirm that and certainly be able to do that. And as Terry said, literally these are hundreds of thousands of dollars of interest that we save over time. And so those financial policies that we do are very important. And so, Council, we just got it today. I will forward it to you tomorrow, and so you'll be able to see that, and then we'll continue to base a lot of our decisions as we do both the capital improvements plan and the budget on that particular document.
Thank you. A couple of questions, Mr. Lannis?
Can you do, just for the record, talk about how the bids are received? Is it a sealed bid? And just for the public, talk a little bit about how that information comes in and it's determined who has the lowest bid, just for a matter of record.
Okay, certainly. Mayor Rossbach, Councilmember Lannis, the bid process is such that at 10:30, it's a fixed time, and all bids have to be submitted by then, and there are a number of ways that they can bid, but we don't share. It's a sealed approach, but they can bid electronically on a system parity that's meant for bidding. It's designed, and most of the financial institutions have access to it, and they just sign up for it. They can also call in their bid. We write it down, and they can fax it in. And so there are a number of ways that they can come to us, but we have to have it independently certified to us. They also have to provide a surety bond, meaning that they will give us, there's a required dollar amount that they have to submit, and if they are the winner, then that actually gets wired into your account. And so they have to be serious when they submit those bids.
Thank you.
Mr. Nephew?
Do you recall what the rate was that we got on last year's bond issue?
I have that information here. I guess I don't have the specific one. I have the bond buyer index on that day. I'll take that back.
Mayor and Council, I'll jump in there. I asked Gail that particular question today, and it was 4.4%, which sounds like a lot, but you remember last year there was stimulus funds available, so we did what's called a BAP.
Right, that was a
Build
America bond.
Stimulus money came for that, and so our effective rate was about 3.04%, I think, last year. So actually, this is a little bit higher, but the bonds were a lot higher last year. We just used stimulus money to pay for a portion of the interest cost.
Right, and that's a program that has expired as well. The related question I had was, am I right in thinking that last year was a 15-year issue, and this is 20?
Mayor and Council, that's correct. Last year was 15-year because it was all assessment bonds.
And so when that's considered as well, then typically, of course, a longer duration is going to have a higher rate. So comparing this year's rate with last year's effective rate on the Build America bonds is really extremely good.
Mayor and Councilmember Nephew, the bonds would have a lower rate if it's a shorter term, and the bond buyer index that I was indicating, that's just an aggregate of all bond issues out there. And so in July of 2010, the bond buyer index was at 4.37. It's actually a little bit higher at 4.69 today. And it would have been a lot, 20, 30 basis points higher a month ago.
Good deal.
Are there any other questions that we have for our, Terry, our reporter? Thank you, I guess.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to work on this. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. I'd like to offer a motion to approve the resolution in our packet accepting the proposal on the competitive negotiated sale, yada, yada, to Morgan Keegan.
Second.
Mr. Nephew has made a motion, which was seconded by Mr. Copen, to award the improvement bond, general obligation improvement bond series 2011A, as presented to us at the meeting tonight. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's ayes all. And so then we get to move from that to consider approval of the Emerald Ash Borer Plan. So quite a change up from one thing to the other.
Welcome, with that, Council had an opportunity to Emerald Ash Borer proposed plan at the workshop on April 25th, and with that, there were a couple of suggested changes that came from the council. Staff has incorporated those changes into the new plan. One of the changes dealt with the pesticide use, and it was a recommendation on behalf of council not to recommend the use of pesticides on public property, and to recommend to folks on private property to use some other environmental means of controlling EAB. The second suggested item in the plan was the ordinance piece.